this interview is actually meant to be shared with young global leaders, people who have significant careers, done amazing in their lives, but actually quite a lot of them wants to start companies. They are thought leaders, politicians, some of them are in politics. So I know that since 2011, you've been advising, investing, mentoring founders from your founder space. That is probably I'm about to find out, fastest growing accelerator program for startup and founders. Steve, thank you for spending time with me today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
Tell me about it. Why entrepreneurship? Why are you spending your life helping entrepreneurs? You could do anything with your life. Why have you dedicated your life helping entrepreneurs?
Well, I've done a lot with my life already. So I feel like this is a great thing for me to do. I founded 3 venture-funded startups in Silicon Valley and 2 bootstrap startups. So I've been in the trenches. I know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Now that I sit on the other side of the table, I'm an angel investor and I coach and mentor entrepreneurs all over the world, hundreds of them. I have a lot to share, a lot of knowledge and experience that I've had. And I have a very large network of investors, mentors, different corporations that want to partner with entrepreneurs. So I can bring all that to the table. And for me, the most exciting thing that I do is engage with really bright minds, really bright men and women who are out there. They see things that I don't see, and they know their business much better than I do. So every time I'm engaged with them, I'm learning. And at the same time, I have a lot of resources and background and information that they don't have. So we put these together, and I love to see that explosion, the explosion of ideas and opportunities that we create.
Mm-hmm. Steve, why should one become an entrepreneur, and why should one not become an entrepreneur? What is the trade-off here?
This is something I write actually about at the very beginning of my book, Surviving a Startup, because I honestly don't believe everybody should be an entrepreneur. You know, some people say everybody should be an entrepreneur, but honestly, there are people out there who would make a great researcher. Like in the laboratory, they're brilliant. You put them out there as an entrepreneur, they're just so ill-suited to that role, and they usually fail. So knowing who you are before you make these life decisions is really important. And this doesn't mean you can't change. Like if you have the will to change and you're intelligent and you're able to learn and actually you have the ability to be introspective, to actually see what you really are, you can come a long way. You could take a person who isn't naturally suited to be an entrepreneur and they can actually become a decent entrepreneur. But if you aren't that type of flexible person, flexible thinker, open-minded, always challenging yourself, always pushing yourself, you're probably better off doing what you're naturally good at. And, you know, a lot of people would make great politicians, terrible entrepreneurs. A lot of people would make great doctors, you know, or librarians, not always the best entrepreneurs. But the qualities that I see consistently with amazing entrepreneurs is, number one, that drive. You just have to have that overwhelming drive, because the reason I call my book Surviving a Startup is because most startups fail. It's brutal. Like it is hard. I know you go out there, there's so many obstacles against you. It's so easy to get discouraged and to give up. So you just need to that drive to plow through whatever everything and do whatever it takes. Number two, if you're really going to be successful, you have to be the type of person who is open to new ideas and notices things in the world that other people don't see. Because if you can't do this, you can still be a great entrepreneur, but you have to surround yourself with people who do this. Somebody in your organization plotting the direction you are going to go needs to be able to see, wow, this is happening, and this is happening. What if we could do this? And that is the beauty of this, is there are more opportunities today to be an entrepreneur than ever before in history. That's because there are more people connected to the internet, collaborating, more new technologies are emerging, more ideas are out there. There's so many different opportunities, but it's still hard. Like to come up with something that's truly breakthrough is not easy, because there's so much more competition than there ever was. Like anybody anywhere in the world, in a remote part of Finland or South Africa or Australia. They could be your next big competitor. You don't even know it. And lastly, and almost most importantly, this is probably the most important one of all of the ones I said, is leadership. Like being an entrepreneur is not a solo task. Like you can be a great individual contributor or a great writer or a lot of things as a solo person, but being a solopreneur is death. You'd never build a $1 billion company by yourself. You never even build a medium-sized company by yourself. You need to bring on people. You need to have the ability to spot incredible talent, to motivate that talent, bring them on board, even when you have little to no money. And that ability to lead, bring in resources to your company, whether it's new customers, venture capital, technologists, advisors, whatever it is, that ability is indispensable. If you can do that one thing well, honestly, and you love doing that, you actually can not have the other two qualities, because you could bring on people with the other qualities, but nobody but the CEO can be the leader. The CEO is the leader, and if the leader fails, the machine doesn't work. It grinds to a halt.
Let's talk about the fact that you have to have leadership skills. Are you born leader, or can it be taught? Can you learn to become a good leader, or are you born as a leader? What do you think?
I think it goes both ways. So it's a spectrum, like all things. So we always like black or white answers, are you born or you're not born? But in reality, it's never that clear. You are born with a certain set of skills, and talents, some of which make you more likely to become a great leader, but nothing is guaranteed. First of all, everything takes hard work. So you look at leaders like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, whoever they are, Jeff Bezos, were they born great leaders? Well, clearly, like Elon Musk is a natural extrovert. He's out there. Bill Gates was not. He was a nerdy guy, but he acquired a lot of the skills it took to be, and he had the resolve to become a great leader. So it's the same as basketball. Like there are certain people out there who are, there's a lot of tall people. There's a lot of people with athletic ability. But really, the great basketball players work like crazy to make it to the top. The great leaders work like crazy and are always improving themselves, always bettering themselves. So if you are born with, exceptional height or exceptional, natural talents for leadership, great, you get a huge head start. If you are born really without those skills at all, because you may be, autistic, you may be a person who's very shy, you may be a person who just can't, manage people, they get stressed out really easily by any sort of interaction. Those type of people, it's going to be really hard to be a great leader. Like it's hard enough just to function, let alone to be a great leader. I would say they're probably better off finding a job that suits who their personality are. Most of us are somewhere in the middle.
Makes sense a lot, Steve. Yeah. So is there any assessment or test, or what should one do to find out if you have what it takes? Let's say you're a first-time entrepreneur. You have this idea, right? You Googled, you found out there's a white space here. There might not be any competition. You think you have something special. Can you walk me through the assessment that you have to do on a personal level and on a business level to find out whether you should actually pursue this or not?
There's no test like the SAT for leadership that I know of. I mean, there might be some leadership tests out there. I don't know how well they work. I would say the best test you can do is to dive in and do it. This is what people do. Like, look, if you're in high school, do it. Like, organize a group, like get in front of the group, see if you can set goals for that group that seem almost unattainable, that haven't been done by previous incarnations of that group, and take them there. Can you do that? Can you lead a sports team? Can you lead a club, like a charity raising club? If you're in college, can you put together projects, bring people together, motivate them? There's the best way to learn. I mean, books are great, right? You can read a lot of books, and they will actually, if they're written by really smart people like Drucker and others, they can actually give you a lot of knowledge and expand your idea of what is possible, and also show you different techniques. Coaching is great. Getting feedback from other people who are great leaders, really important. Like, what do they do? Modeling yourself after great leaders, looking at what they actually do in the real world, having a boss who is a great leader who can be your mentor and show you on a day-to-day basis. Nothing better than having a great boss, like who's a real leader to teach you. But even if you have none of those things, like you could, you can just go out there and do it. You can organize around anything. You can organize in your neighborhood, a group that goes out and beautifies the neighborhood, and you come up with plans and big ambitions, and you go lobby city hall and you get people organized, and by the time you're done with that, you've had like a graduate course in leadership. Like, it's almost, you do that as well as get mentored and read, you have everything you can do it's almost free. It just requires your time. You just have to go out there and do it. And then how do you know you're a great leader? Results speak for themselves. You don't need a test, right? Like, if you're able to make significant change in the world, if you're able to overcome obstacles, if you're able to get, all the people who are necessary to accomplish this goal focused on and working on and achieving and exceeding that goal, you are a great leader. The results speak for themselves.
So if you can get people to follow you and you can show results through other folks, that is an early prediction that you are a leader.
Yeah, you ask, like, what do really great people who know how to hire great team members do? Like, if you look at like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, they've talked about what their hiring criteria is, and they are looking for exactly these people. And what they do is they'll look at your resume. Oh, you went to this college, you get this GPA, you had these internships, everybody has, there are a lot of resumes like that. What distinguishes the people who are really going to excel within the organization? Oh, they did something exceptional in their life. Oh, they went out, they started a project, or they took over a project and they took it beyond where most people could. You say those things in an interview to a great interviewer who's, really knows how to judge people. That's when the light bulbs go off for them. Oh, they did this here. This is real proof, right? That's more proof than that. Most of the stuff on the resume, it's really hard to get those sort of things onto your resume. There are things that you are best communicated verbally, but that being able to demonstrate and show somebody what you've actually done in the real world is the exam that, like, great managers do. Like Elon Musk said it, I want to see people who've done something exceptional. Show me what you've done exceptional. And then I don't care about your college, right? I don't care if it's, an Ivy League or not. It doesn't matter to me. Like, you've already proven to me you can do it.
Steve, as a 7th grade school dropout, I love what you're saying personally. So I agree with you. If you can prove that you've succeeded life and done well with what you have. Personally, I like hustlers, people who had nothing but took what they had and built something out of nothing.
Yeah. They make something exponential out of nothing. And that's what you did with your life. I know your life story is pretty amazing. The people who do that, you always want to work with those people. And they've already proven to themselves that they can make things happen.
Back to qualities in life. So leadership, you said drive, grit, growth mindset, these kind of things. Steve, can those things be taught? Can you teach yourself how to be more resilient? Rejection, from my own perspective, I had to get used to being rejected, moving to Silicon Valley, pitching investors, right? And in the beginning, where you don't know
brutal.
Anything.
It's
brutal. In the beginning,
me too. I don't take rejection well. I don't like being judged. I mean, who does? Well, some people have a very thick skin, like they can take it, like they can, it just bounces off them. Other people, like you and me, like for us, it's a lot harder, and you can learn those things. So honestly, you can teach yourself a lot. You can have great people teaching you. I'm a teacher, right? So I teach entrepreneurs all the time. And I will tell you, when I am engaging with them, a lot, I'm trying to challenge them. A lot of times I'm trying to challenge them to push themselves, to reevaluate their ideas that they've already fallen in love with, that they don't want to change, to look at reality for what it is and not what they want to be, which is hard for any visionary. They all want reality to conform to our vision. But these type of things can be learned. I've learned a lot. Like in my own life, I can tell you, like, I started off extremely shy. you wouldn't know it now. Like I can just speak like in front of audience. I've spoken in front of tens of thousands of people, you know, in live events and stuff like that around the world. And I couldn't even imagine doing that in high school. Like in high school, if you asked anybody in my high school, Steve Hoffman, oh, he's the shy guy. He's the shy guy. Like, oh, I was the shy guy. But you know what changed? Literally, it was my drive. Like I said, I want to accomplish things in the world, and being shy, I cannot do them. Like I have to break this. I have to overcome this. And it wasn't overnight. That's the other thing. You cannot change things, core things about yourself, you know, in a month. We'd all love it. You go to a special course and all of a sudden you're not shy, or you're the great leader that you always wanted to be. It doesn't happen that way. It's a long process of trying and failing and trying and failing and getting a little bit better and then getting knocked back to the ground. And I remember the first time when I was giving speeches for my very first startup, I was so shy. I was literally shaking on stage, and my employees were laughing at me because you could see that it was terrible. Like I was like terrible. Like I couldn't, like I was so nervous. Now it's just, you do stuff enough. Like you shoot basketball hoops enough times, you're going to get it in, you're going to learn how to get it in the basket. So I was no natural. And there's still a lot of things about, I think, any individual that they can improve on. Like I'm always setting new goals. Like, could I do this better? Could I be smarter? What did I do wrong? You know, a big part is, you know, how do you get people to be motivated, right? How do you get people to actually listen to you? How do you motivate people to put in that extra thing, not to go home at 5 p.m., you know, and then not think about the company or their project after that? How do you get them to say, oh, this project needs to be done and I'm going to do whatever it takes to take it? Well, I've learned a few things along the way. Number one, the biggest thing you can do is it's very hard to change people. People have to want to change themselves. So all you can do as a leader is, number one, the most important thing, pick the right people from the start. The people are self-motivated, self-driven. They want to do it themselves. Number two, as a great leader, let them do it. Don't stand in their way. Support them and give them the responsibility. Number three, set really high goals and expectations. Expect them to do more than they can even do. You do those three things, you're on the way to becoming a great leader.
So you say pick the right team. I've heard that picking the right folks for your startup or project really is the most difficult thing, because in the early stage, right, you have no money, maybe a little bit of money. How do you get the how do you get the best folks if you don't have money? What else can you use to motivate people to take a chance and join your startup instead of staying in their well-paid job?
I'll tell you, ask yourself one question. Why did I do this? Why am I doing this? Usually it's not for the money, because you know, most people who are entrepreneurs, who are capable entrepreneurs, could have a great cushy corporate job with guaranteed salary and stock options and benefits and all these. They can live a fine life. Why are you risking all that to try some crazy idea that, like most startups, will probably fail? Well, you are doing that because it's inside you, right? You want the chance to prove yourself. You want the chance to make a difference in the world. You want the chance to do not things that seem that everybody else is doing, but to do something exceptional. Well, the people you want on your team are exactly the same type of person. So what's going to motivate them is not writing them a big check, because they can already get that. They could work for Google or Facebook or Microsoft or any of these companies and get that big check. What's going to get them is if you engage them on the level, not go to them and say, do you want to work on my idea? If I ask you to work on my idea, then all of a sudden you're saying, well, no, if I'm going to take the big risk, I want to do it on my own idea. You need to think, how can I make first of all, how can I find people who are open to the idea of sharing this journey together? How can we together build something that we together conceptualize, that we together want to see brought into this world? So first of all, it's not easy. You can't just go out and pick people you already know a lot of the time. like, because they're not the right people. You need to find people in the world who share the same passions with you, who really want to make a difference in a certain area of the world. And if you get through to those people and they're like, oh, I've always wanted to do that, but I never saw the opportunity. And then you're in front of them and saying, yeah, just quit your job at Google. We'll do this together. You're going to make a much bigger difference for us doing this together than you will ever working for Google. They can get somebody to replace you, but nobody can bring this into the world but us. That type of thinking and that. So let me give you an example. You have the fishing industry, right? We all know it's a terrible industry, awful. They treat their employees horribly on these factory ships. They do this deep line fishing, which literally wipes out all these species of aquatic life. They pollute enormously, and they're decimating the fish populations, right? That industry needs to be transformed. Now, if you find people out there that are super passionate about doing this, they may be, and they have skills that you need to implement this. One might be a technologist, another might be a designer, another might be, somebody who worked in the fishing industry, and you bring them together around this nexus of an idea. And you don't say, like, I wouldn't even go to them with a specific idea, because usually the idea you start out with for whatever startup you do, it's not even right. Like, you don't know what the fishing industry will respond to, what they want, how to sell into them, all the stuff. But you say, look, I want your ideas. Together, we could build a company. We could start this and we could transform this industry. Let's all of us get together, put our heads together, start thinking of new ways to transform this industry. And then as a team, as we go out to the fishing industry, and they're never going to buy anything because it makes the world more sustainable. They have their own priorities. They want to make money. They're under pressure. They have all these things. You're going to have to change them by showing them that it's to their benefit. And you only do that through collaboration with the people in that industry. So I say, when you start a startup, don't wait for the epiphany. You don't even need an idea. You need a direction. I want to change the fishing industry. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but damn, I'm going to try. And there's all these new technologies. We got to find a way to make fishing more precise, more better, more sustainable, and more profitable and efficient for the fishing companies, because that's what's going to get them on board. And you do that, all of a sudden, everything opens up. You have a new business and your team is totally motivated because they are brought on, they're doing this process with you.
That's pretty, it's a very good piece of advice, as so many of your other advices, but this is a very good one. Get a group together, fall in love with the problem, build it early with the industry that you want to disrupt or help, and really get them on the team and on your site. So
and don't think it has to be your idea. Don't have that ego problem. Remember, Elon Musk didn't start Tesla. He was an investor in Tesla. Kalanick didn't start Uber. He was an investor in Uber. These are the biggest startups. Mark Zuckerberg took his idea from two other people. like literally, he stole the idea a little unscrupulously, but he did it. Steve Jobs walked into Xerox Parks and saw the future that somebody else was building and took the ideas. It doesn't have to be your idea. Great leaders don't come up with the great ideas. They recognize the great ideas. They bring together a team that can execute on them. They go out into the real world and make it happen.
Oh man, Steve, I love that. So thinking of building a startup, is money always the solution? I very often hear from founders, oh, I need 10 million, then I'm going to build. Is money always the solution?
I hear this all the time. I have startups say, if I just had $1 million, I could market this like crazy and it'd take off. And I'm like, I wouldn't be so sure of that. We all say if we just had money. And what I tell entrepreneurs is there's some projects that do require a lot of initial capital to get going. Honestly, if you're going to do SpaceX, another big project, right? Or big solar energy project, you need money. Like, these things don't happen without a lot of upfront capital. But if you aren't Elon Musk and you aren't famous, or you aren't super well connected in the financial world, and you can't raise that type of capital initial, you're starting off with the wrong idea. Honestly, wait till you're famous before you do one of those big money upfront ideas. Pick an idea that doesn't require money. And there's so many of them out there because there's so much open source software out there. There's so much talent just waiting to be tapped if you're the right type of person that can bring it together. There's so many opportunities that really require just your time. Like, because we now have AWS, all these cloud platforms, it costs nothing to get a project started. Like, they'll allow you to put it up for free to get going. So take advantage. There's so many ideas in the world you could do. Pick ones that you can do within your means. And then you don't need money, because if you need money, a lot of times money is a false hope. Like, a lot of people say they need money when they've launched their product. I've seen it. They've launched their early version of the product and they're not getting adoption. So they like they did a project on sweat equity, no money, and they got it out there and it's just not going. And they're like, oh, if I just had money to market this, it would take off. I'm like, honestly, if you put it out there and it's not really going and you don't really see it going, money doesn't solve those problems. It actually masks those problems. And we've seen this over and over again in Silicon Valley. There have been companies out there. There's a company called Color. They raised $80 million for this new type of photo sharing social network thing. Went nowhere, right? Because, and you know, it went nowhere. They just kind of had to do a tech sale. They been companies like Boo, and most people don't remember Boo.com. They raised tons of money for this online commerce thing, went nowhere. The money just masked the problem. So all these companies end up going away. Usually, for most projects, you get the core out there. And if you can get the core out there on your sweat equity, you can find out if it's working or not. And if it's not taking off, money almost never saves you.
I was one of my good friends, and YGL is Michelle, the president of Cloudflare. They IPO'd. And I remember she was telling me when I started Happy, she said something like, you know, Soulaima, we raised $100,000 in the first round, and they could not just pay themselves out of the problems, but they had to innovate. And that's actually one of the reasons why they're so successful today, because they had to really look at each dollar and really be creative with that money. So that inspired me very much.
It does. It requires more, you know, when you don't have money, you can't just acquire customers and try to simulate growth. When you don't have money, you have to listen to your customers. You have to engage with them. You have to get them motivated to share it and talk about it. Much harder task. But once you figure that out, you figure out what about your product or service they are really responding to. What is it they really need? When you hit on a product, that I like to say, you know, if you're an entrepreneur and you go out to 100 potential customers, which I always tell my entrepreneurs to do, I like, don't ask me if it's going to succeed. Go ask 100 customers. And often they'll come back to me and say, you know, I just talked to 100 potential customers. It's a lot of work. And, you know, they all said they like it. Come back when it's ready to launch and they'll try it out. And you know what I tell them? I say, you're dead in the water. You have already proven this won't work. Because if everybody's telling you, oh, I like that, come back later, they are telling you they will never use your product. A product that is nice to have, oh, it might be nice, come back later, I'll try it out. Nobody has time for. What I want you to have heard from at least a good portion of your customers is not, oh, that's nice, come back later, I'll try it out. I want you to hear, can I get that today? How can I get it? What can I do? Can I try it out? When is it ready? Can I sign up as a beta user? Can I buy it? Like you want a reaction like they are, oh my God, I've been waiting for this and you're showing it to me. I need that. If you get that reaction, you have a real product. And usually when you get that reaction, that's gold. Like, first of all, that's gold. Secondly, because you get that reaction, selling your product isn't hard. Like, it's literally just getting it in front of people and it will sell itself.
I'm laughing because I'm sitting with 2 emails exactly like just the headline is, can we please try your product? And I'm frustrated because we are not ready.
See, that's what you want, are people knocking down your door to get your product before you build it. And you get that reaction and then you know you're on to something. Yeah,
but it's also frustrating because as a CEO, you just want to launch, right? And
oh,
anyway,
yeah, I know.
And anyway, we can take that off record. But it's really true what you say. It's my experience as an entrepreneur. So first and foremost, and I don't know if everyone agrees with me in this recording, I would never build something that I don't build with early users, right? What I like to do is to pick a cohort of 5, 10, 15, 20 clients who are non-competitive. I mean, they cannot be competitors because then they don't want to share information with you, but build a cohort, make it their project as well. Make sure that they get rewarded for taking a risk and a bet on you, right? Because truth is, I used to work for Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, Maersk, very large enterprises with really solid brands. It's not a game changer in your career if you buy from those companies. It's safe, it's secure, no one is going to fire you, right? For buying from those companies. While if you take a piece of software from an early stage company, you don't really know if this is going to work. There's a lot that you risk in your own career by helping such a small startup. So it is very important that you, even within large enterprises, if you do that, find those folks who maybe even wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it's not, and they're powerful and they would like to help you. So I think the first challenge for you as an entrepreneur is also to really make sure you can scan the environment of all those potential customers and really map those who will take a risk with you, because you cannot do this alone. Do you agree on that, Steve? No.
I totally agree. First of all, if you aren't fully engaged with your customers, you're never going to build the right product, because what you think they want and what they actually want are often two very different things. And I tell entrepreneurs, it's an iterative process. It's not like you have this epiphany, it's all there and you build it. Usually you start building and then you find out, oh, if we took it this direction a little bit, it'll be better. Oh no, I see this new thing that they really need that we didn't even, that was like just an extra feature. There's so many examples of this in the real world. It's amazing. Like Yelp. For Yelp, the review feature was an add-on later that they didn't think would be a big deal. Their main focus was something entirely different. And it turned out the reviews were everything. Like, that is Yelp. That was just an add-on. For Groupon, they were the founder of Groupon, Andrew Mason, was actually building a social good platform. It was called The Point. And the point of thepoint.com was that everybody would come in there and help people do projects for social good. And this thing was kind of going, but kind of very slow. Like, it just wasn't taking off. And then his investor, his early angel investor, said, look at this group of people. They're using your platform you built to actually share coupons, do group buying. And he goes, there's something there. And Andrew Mason, you know what his reaction was? That's not how we should shut them down. That's not how they were supposed to use. This is for social good. They're just trying to get discounts. That's totally against the principles of our site. And the investor goes, no, don't shut them down. Like, don't, watch what they do. And eventually, when he needed more money, the investor, he came back to the investor, I need more money. We're running out of money. The investor said, well, you know, those people that keep doing that coupon thing. I'll give you more money if you split that off and launch it. And that became Groupon. So in whatever you're doing, there's example after example after example. Twitter was a podcasting site. They were something totally different. There are nuggets in there that you cannot anticipate.
So what you're saying is launch your product, your MVP, right? Let people use it. You might be surprised who's actually your audience, because it might actually not be those that you have in mind.
And how they use it. We all know Instagram, but Instagram began as a product called Bourbon. And in my earlier book, Make Elephants Fly, I write about this. Bourbon was actually, it was an entire mobile social network mirroring Facebook with all the different features. And they found out that people would come into Bourbon, start using it, and then kind of drop off. they would, but there was a core group of users who kept using a few features over and over and over again. And they're like, what are these features they're actually using? And number one was the photo filters, the filters on the photos. And number two, they wanted to share those photos on Facebook, because they didn't have a critical mass of Bourbon users, right? So they had the brilliant ideas. This is what people want. Let's give it to them. They killed Bourbon. They launched a new project, called it Instagram, had two main features. Use photo filters when you take a picture, share it on Facebook. That simple, without all the other features, went through the roof.
So what you're saying there, it's really fascinating. What you also are saying is dare, that's what I'm reading out of what you're saying, dare to start small, you pretty much every company you mentioned here had some natural pivot, if you like.
Yes.
But they also have very limited set of features, if you like.
They did. And that having a limited, well, bourbon, actually, they built way too much. They had way too many features. And they had to literally throw out the app and start over with a new one, with just the core. And there was another example of this. That site Flickr, which was the first photo sharing social platform, became really popular, still around today. That started out as a game. And the photo sharing was a feature of the game that they threw in there to try to get people more engaged with the game. Well, people didn't care about the game. The game wasn't fun. They weren't playing it, but they were sharing photos. And so again, they just cut out the photo sharing thing and said, boom. So when you're doing a startup, you really need the less you build, often the better. And a lot of times you're building the wrong stuff. But even if you build a lot of things, it's usually, almost always, it's one thing that drives growth. There's usually one thing that people are getting from your product that they aren't getting anywhere else that will drive your growth. And all the other things can actually be a distraction. They can be like, they can muddy what you're doing so people aren't coming to you for the right reason. Like if they're coming to play a game, but not do photo sharing, and then some of them find out the photo sharing by chance and start using that in a way, then why not just launch a photo sharing so that everybody that comes to you can go and use that feature? It becomes a much cleaner proposition, and it explodes from something that was dying. So analyzing how people actually use what you built, and also building a core, it's much faster, cheaper, and you can measure much more clearly. So there are a lot of people that put products out there with lots of features, and then they can't really figure out what people are doing with them, right? Because there's or what people like. You put it out with one thing, and it'll either go or it won't in most cases. Like it'll take off. People are like, oh my God, I need that right now. Or I love it. I love what that does, or it won't.
So growth versus revenue. Steve Hoffman.
Well, growth always matters more, like always, because you can defer revenue, but you can't defer growth. Like if you aren't growing, like you could have one customer that pays you a lot of money, but nobody else, it doesn't matter. Like that one customer is a freak accident. But if you're growing, you can, whatever people are engaging with, we found in this world, especially if it's software, there is a way to monetize it. Like literally monetization, like isn't hard. Like there are only a few models for monetizing software. Like we like to think, oh, innovative business model, but really there are only a few. There's one where people buy your product. They like pay for your product. Either they pay for it once, or better, instead of a one-time sale, they pay a recurring subscription, or two, they get it for free and you monetize it another way through ads, sponsorship. And if you do the ad model, you better have a product that can scale to a lot of users, because literally ads pay a tiny amount of money. So you got to be like a Facebook big, Twitter big, like it has to be a huge mass market product, or advertising will never work. I've had entrepreneurs come up to me and say, what model are you doing? Ad model. And you're doing ad model for this thing that can only grow to 100,000 users? Like it's never going to produce any revenue. So figuring out your business model is pretty simple. One of those has to work. And if it doesn't, then you don't have a business.
Very, very, very good points. So what you're saying is that you said a few words about marketing. I myself have a sales deployment background. So I really love sales, and I think it's an underestimated skill early on in companies. But I do get worried when I meet entrepreneurs who says, "Oh, I have this idea. I'll just find someone to build it, and then I'll get some sales reps to sell it." And I'm like, I don't think that's a healthy. First and foremost, you as a founder, CEO, should be able to sell your own product. You shouldn't get sales folks until you really have the product market fit and you know exactly what you're doing. What is your take on sales and marketing? Is that something you can just hire people to do early on, or what do you think?
Well, when I tell people the core team they need at the beginning, you probably noticed I didn't say a marketing person. I said you need a great technologist, a great designer, somebody from the industry who can give you inside information that you wouldn't know otherwise. But you usually don't need sales or marketing, because at the beginning, you're doing a lot of little experiments, and you And your whole team should be going out and engaging with those customers. Like you should be spending the face time. That's what the innovation process early on is, spending the face time and interaction with them, with all the brains of your company. Now, venture capital, it's angel capital is a lot of times necessary for that first step, just so that you have enough money to actually build it out. And usually that isn't a lot of money. You know, it's 100K or so. But venture capital is really bad at the innovation level at the very beginning. It doesn't help your company, as we talked about earlier. Too much money can actually kill you by masking the problem. And secondly, you don't know how to spend it, because like you just pointed out so aptly, if you don't have a product market fit, if you haven't figured out your product market fit and you start to pump in venture capital, it's a disaster. Like we've seen it, you know, these companies just run off a cliff because they have all this money. So what do you do when you have a lot of money? You start hiring up people, you start spending on marketing, it seems like your company's growing. Like the growth is going up because you're paying for customers, you know, your staff is getting bigger, all these things are going, you have lots of deals on the table. But if that core isn't there, there is nothing. These companies end up just imploding. We see them all the time. They just vanish like, oh, that didn't work. But venture capital is excellent. Sales and marketing is excellent once you have that product market fit. Once you have demonstrated that, yes, there's a market out there. We know exactly who our customers are. We know exactly how to reach them. We have a product and they're engaged with it. Now we want to go out and simply get the machine going, add fuel to the engine. We want to acquire more customers, bring them in, because what venture capital is essentially is a down payment on those customers. It's saying, I'm going to help you buy those customers in advance, and you're going to pay me back more because I'm going to participate in the growth of your company. Like, and these people, you might not be profitable like Amazon for years, decades, you know, it might take a while to profit, but we don't care because we're in the and this is what venture capital does so well, in the rapid scaling mode. Because we know most of these tech markets today, because it's so frictionless and they can scale so well, it's a winner take all market. So the venture capitalist job is literally to say, you figured out something amazing. You got the engine working. Now we're going to make sure that engine takes over the world by shoveling money in.
Paying attention to your time, Steve. So VC money, bootstrapping. So that is incredibly unsexy, isn't it?
It is. So nobody comes to Silicon Valley saying, I came to Silicon Valley, I'm going to bootstrap it. I'm not going to take a penny of venture capital. I don't want to talk to venture capitalists. Those guys are sharks. Get them away from me. No, everybody comes here with the dream is, I have an idea. Show me the money. Like, give me the money. Like, let me live the dream. They think like they close their venture round and it's done. Their business is done. Like they've made it. They figure like if a venture capitalist validates me, I've made it. I can't tell you how many startups I see that raise venture capital and go nowhere. Like you don't read about them, or you read about them and you forget because they're one of those things you read in TechCrunch, 6 months ago or 2 years ago or 10 years ago, and they no longer exist. But we only keep hearing the same stories of the successful companies over and over. So yes, a lot of people, and I thought this way myself, is once I close the venture money, all my problems would be solved. But what you find out is your problems are, if you haven't, especially if you haven't figured out the core, your problems are only amplified because now you have all these investors who expect all this stuff. And if you haven't got the product market fit, I had one company that didn't get the product market fit before we raised a lot of money because I'm good at sales. And it was a disaster. Like then we're scraping around, trying all these other things with venture capitalists breathing down your neck, like trying to get you to, solve, we invested in this idea. Now you're shifting to this one. And now you're shifting to that. Like, well, the first one didn't work. You guys invested too soon. That happens all the time.
So you said, Steve, that you should have a lot of drive, right? Because you will need it because it's hard, long days, lots of rejection, thick skin. When do you know when time is to give up then?
I have entrepreneurs, because I run founders, all these entrepreneurs, and they come to me and they're like, Captain Hoff's my nickname. They're Captain Hoff. I've been working on this 2 years. Should I quit? Like it, hasn't taken off. And I look into their eyes, and almost every single time I give them the same advice. I say, absolutely, quit. quit today, like give it up, drop that thing. And you would think, am I, a sadist? Do I like watching entrepreneurs suffer as I tell them that their baby is ugly and that it's never going to work? No, I'm telling them what they need to hear, because no entrepreneur doesn't want to believe in their idea. Nobody. Every entrepreneur wants to do whatever it takes to make it succeed. And if they are coming to me asking if they should quit, they already know the answer. They know that this isn't working. Otherwise, they're not going to ask me if they should quit. They're going to ask me, how can I make this bigger? How can I work? What can we try next? They're not going to be saying, should I quit? When they're going to quit, they're asking for permission to move on from something that isn't working. And I will tell you, most entrepreneurs fail, honestly, because they quit too late, not too early. Now, I talked earlier about perseverance. There's a difference between quitting working on an idea, on a project, and quitting being an entrepreneur. You never, if you're a real entrepreneur, you never quit being an entrepreneur. Quitting is just changing direction. It's saying, look, we recognize that no matter what we do, the core of this isn't working. And it's just, we're just, it's like putting more frosting on a cake. It's not going to make the cake taste better. It's actually going to make it taste worse. Like, you can put as much frosting as you want. The cake isn't going to get any better. So at a certain time, I tell them, you keep frosting that cake with the cake isn't good. Like, nobody likes your cake. You got to bake a new cake. That is something entrepreneurs need to recognize earlier. And, people believe, there's a mythology out there, and I believed it, is that if you're totally passionate about your idea, if you believe in it, then you can find a way to make it work. In reality, that just isn't true. That's a myth. Like, no one, not Steve Jobs, not, Elon Musk, no one makes people, no one can build an idea, introduce it to the world, and make people love it. Like, they either, even if it's very crude, if people need that, want that, it'll take off. And even if it's perfected with every bell and whistle and integration to every social network and marketing thing you can possibly think of, if it's not something people need and want, you cannot, I like to say it very simply, nobody can manufacture demand. You cannot, demand exists in the world. And it's your entrepreneur's number one job, not to manufacture demand for a product that people aren't really crazy about. Their job is to hunt for demand, to find hidden pockets of demand that aren't being met. And that is what drives their business. That demand is already there. Like, people get confused because, like, Steve Jobs famously said, I never ask the customer anything. I only build what I want to build. He's kind of reinforcing this myth. That wasn't true. What Steve Jobs did in everything that he did that was successful, and he had a lot of failures. He had Next Computer, he had the Newton, he had the Lisa, all these things that failed. But the things that worked, if you look consistently, the demand was already out there. The iPod, right? The iPod. Well, the PC, first of all, like, people were already buying PCs. He wasn't the first PC maker, right? Secondly, the iPod, which really relaunched Apple, there were tons of MP3 music players and they were selling like crazy. He just made a much better one, a much more innovative one. The iPhone, there were already the Palm Pilot, all these other phones out there with graphical user interfaces really similar to the iPhone, but not quite there yet. They just weren't quite there, and he took it to the next level. So those pockets of demand were waiting for those products to come along, and he tapped into them. And that's exactly what you need to do.
Wow, Steve, coming up in time here. By the way, I'm from Denmark, and we have a company called Bang & Olufsen. You probably know they have.
Oh, I know the speakers.
And we like to think that Steve Jobs borrowed our
the interface, right? He probably did. He borrowed everything, right? He looked at things that worked in the real world. He didn't, and he took them from everywhere and everybody. And that's what great entrepreneurs do. That's what innovation is. Innovation is not invention. There are great inventors out there like Nikola Tesla, who just miserably failed and died penniless. He
actually did.
He did die, and well, Elon Musk gets to play on his name. But Elon Musk is a borrower. He's somebody who goes out and looks at what works and jumps on whatever bandwagon is going, because that's what great entrepreneurs do. That's what great innovators do. They're opportunists who are very smart, very creative, very innovative. That's what entrepreneurship is.
So what you're saying, Steve, is also it's not necessarily necessary to be the first mover in a market. Is it always a great thing to be the first in the market?
I will tell you, there is a huge first mover advantage if you get it right.
Mm-hmm.
But often the first movers don't get it right. So there was MySpace out there and the social networks. And there was Friendster. They were both first movers. Friendster, didn't get it right, had huge technical problems and other issues. MySpace got it halfway right. But to Mark Zuckerberg's credit, he figured out how to build what people actually wanted. And when he did, he wasn't the first mover, but he was the first mover who gets it right. The first mover gets it right is very hard to displace. Just being a first mover isn't enough.
But being the first in the market is also very hard because you have to keep defending your position, right? It's everyone goes for you.
It's a huge advantage. It's very hard. There's always going to be competition, but the hard part is getting it right. Let's face it. The hard part, once the first person to get it right wins, like period, they win if they get it right. And I mean, right in all the different ways. Like, there's a big battle between Apple and IBM in the early days with Microsoft making the software. And let's face it, Steve Jobs got it right with the Mac, but he didn't take the market share because he positioned his computer to creatives and hobbyists. And IBM came in and positioned it and sold it to business. And theirs wasn't as sophisticated, wasn't as elegant, but sure enough, they caught up. Right? So Steve Jobs got the product right, but he didn't get the marketing and the market exactly right, or he could have crushed them because the Mac was so much better, But so getting the whole thing right is what counts.
What is the one question that you think everyone should be asking themselves? I mean, you have helped hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs since 2011, actually, and probably even earlier than that. What is the one thing that everyone should ask themselves?
So you should ask yourself, what do I really want to do in this world? And what difference can I really make? Because you can do a lot of things. A lot of people can make money. And there's a lot of scammers out there. We see it in the blockchain, the whole crypto world, NFTs and, other stuff where people are just out to scam, and they are scamming, and some of them quite successfully. But is that what you want to do? Is that going to be meaningful to you in the end? Is that going to make this place a better world? I'll tell you, we have so many real problems to solve. Real problems that affect people's lives, that really that are costing lives all around the world, that are costing, our climate we're in a climate crisis right now that, the world is ignoring. There's problems with hunger. People still are on the streets of San Francisco, where I live, they're homeless everywhere. We have not addressed any of these problems. Education globally, there's so many real problems. Why work on some little thing that's going to make some money? Why not address some of the real problems?
I mean, that's a very good message for the young global leaders. We are supposed to and eager to change the world and make it better. So
yes, it's the young people who have to do it. Let's face it. My generation dropped the ball. If we keep dropping the ball, there's going to be no ball left. Literally.
Do you think your generation dropped the ball?
I do. I think
really?
For all the great things our generation did, bringing great technologies and great stuff, we did some things really right. So we got a lot of hundreds of millions of people lifted out of poverty by creating a great economic situation. But you look at areas, there's still big disparities in the United States and the rest of the world between different groups within, we are one of the richest countries in the nation. We can't seem to educate half our population at a decent level. They're not getting a decent education. They're not getting the same opportunities. They're not having a chance to reach or fulfill their potential to this world. We're squandering and we're the richest nation in the world. Imagine countries that are, nations that are struggling, just to survive, just to keep going. It's a real shame, the opportunities we have not taken advantage of that we could have had a very low cost and actually been profitable. So I challenge the entrepreneurs, all of you entrepreneurs out there who you can do these things, and the cost has become much lower. The technology makes it able to scale easier. The one thing I tell you is if you can do it as a for-profit company, not nonprofit, but you can do great things with your for-profit company, it's a much better way. Because a nonprofit requires you always to go back and get money. You can't scale the business except through donors, and donors don't scale. Like, it's really hard to raise money. But if you can find a way to create value that gets a machine going, that generates revenue, and even if it's a not-for-profit where you plug all the profits back into the company, if you can build that scaling machine, you can have a far bigger impact on this world.
Oh, sweet music to my ears. That's wonderful. Steve, finally, you're still author. So just a few words about your recent book. How can we help you? How can this amazing community of young global leaders, how can we help you succeed and impact more startups and help more founders? What can we do to help you with your books, with your services and the things that you're passionate about doing? How
First
can
of
we
all,
help you?
if you have a great idea, come to me.
Okay.
Come to me at Founders Space, founderspace.com. Super easy. You can reach out to me right on the site. I want to hear from you. We have a lot of resources there for entrepreneurs, lots of educational resources for raising capital, all these different things for entrepreneurs. Secondly, if you want to read my books, and I think they'd be very valuable, especially if you're in the early stages of doing a startup, just go to Founder Space again. All the books are there, Surviving a Startup, Make Elephants Fly, The 5 Forces, they're all there. And you can also reach out to me on social networks. I'm on every social network. Search for Steve Hoffman. LinkedIn is a great place. You can contact me on LinkedIn. And, I meet entrepreneurs all over the world. I travel a lot. I'd love to engage with you.
Oh, Steve, thank you so much for that kind invitation. Thank you so much for your time today. And we are very pleased to hear all your wisdom